They looked at her uniform, then at her skin, and decided she didn't belong. Captain Jordan Banks wasn't just a pilot. She was the highest-ranking Czech airman in the company, holding the power to ground any flight, any time. But when a gate agent sneered and told her to wait outside like a stray dog, they didn't realize they weren't just insulting a passenger. They were triggering a chain reaction that would cost them their jobs, ground the entire fleet, and expose a corruption scandal that would shake the aviation industry to its core. You think you know karma? Wait until you hear how she shut them all down. The rain at Chicago O'Hare wasn't just falling. It was hammering against the glass walls of Terminal 3, like it was trying to break in. It was the kind of November sleet that made every flight delayed, every passenger miserable, and every airline employee edgy. Captain Jordan Banks adjusted the collar of her trench coat. She wasn't in full uniform, just her dark trousers and the white pilot shirt, the epaulets currently hidden beneath the heavy beige coat she wore to fight off the Midwest chill. She was tired. It had been a 14-hour duty day, flying a cargo heavy from Frankfurt, and now she was deadheading back to her home base in Atlanta on a commercial flight, Skyline Airways. Flight 492. She wasn't flying the plane today. She was just a passenger. Or so everyone thought. Jordan walked up to the gate podium, her roller bag gliding silently beside her. She checked her watch. Boarding was supposed to have started 10 minutes ago, but the door remained shut. A crowd of restless passengers stood in a loose semicircle, their eyes darting between the departure screen and the two agents behind the counter. One of the agents, a woman named Brenda, with a tight blonde ponytail and a badge that looked like it was weighing down her blouse, was aggressively typing on a computer. The other, a younger man named Kyle, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Jordan stepped up to the priority lane. As a Skyline Airways captain, and specifically a senior standards captain, she had priority boarding privileges even when deadheading. She just wanted to get on, stow her bag, and close her eyes. "Excuse me," Jordan said softly, her voice calm despite the exhaustion dragging at her bones. Brenda didn't look up. She kept typing, the clicks of the keyboard sharp and angry. Jordan waited 3 seconds. "Excuse me, I have a quick question about the jump seat listing." Brenda finally stopped typing. She looked up, her eyes scanning Jordan from her boots to her messy bun, completely ignoring the pilot insignia visible on her bag tag. She didn't see a captain. She saw a young black woman in a trench coat standing in the priority lane. "Economy boarding hasn't started yet," Brenda snapped, her voice loud enough for the first few rows of passengers to hear. "You need to wait for your zone." "I'm not waiting for a zone," Jordan said, keeping her tone level. "I'm crew. I'm listed for the jump seat, but I was hoping to see if there was a seat open in the back so I don't have to sit up front." Brenda let out a short, derisive laugh. She leaned over the counter, pointing a manicured finger toward the general terminal area. "Look, honey, I don't know what kind of scam you're running, or if you bought a fake badge online, but crew boarding is done. The pilots are already on board." "I know the pilots are on board," Jordan said, her patience thinning by a fraction. "Captain Miller and First Officer Davis. I just saw them go down. I'm deadheading. If you could just check my ID." Jordan reached into her coat pocket to pull out her crew ID, the hard plastic card that granted her access to the secure areas of almost every airport in the world. "I don't need to check anything," Brenda interrupted, standing up straighter. "We are dealing with a mechanical delay. I have 200 angry people staring at me, and I don't have time for someone trying to sneak on early. You are blocking the priority lane." "I am priority," Jordan said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming the steel tone she used when ATC tried to give her a vector into a thunderstorm. I'm a Skyline captain. Now please, take my ID. She placed the ID on the counter. Brenda didn't even touch it. She looked at Kyle, the younger agent. "Can you believe this?" she muttered. Then she turned back to Jordan. "I'm going to ask you once. Step away from the podium. Go wait outside the boarding area. When I call Zone 5, you can come back, if you have a ticket." "Wait outside?" Jordan repeated. "It's freezing near the doors, and I need to brief with the operating crew." "You aren't briefing with anyone," Brenda spat. "You are disrupting a federal flight process. Step away, or I'm calling security." The crowd behind them began to murmur. A tall man in a business suit sighed loudly. "Come on, lady, just move so we can board," he grumbled. Jordan looked at the man, then back at Brenda. She realized two things instantly. First, Brenda had absolutely no intention of looking at her credentials. Second, this wasn't just about a busy day. This was the specific, dismissive arrogance Jordan had fought her entire career. The assumption that she couldn't possibly be who she said she was. "You're refusing to validate a crew member?" Jordan asked, pulling out her phone. "I'm refusing to let a disruptive passenger harass me," Brenda retorted. She picked up the PA microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are pausing the process because we have a passenger refusing to follow instructions. We will resume as soon as she steps away." The crowd groaned. The hostility in the air shifted, aiming squarely at Jordan. Jordan looked at Brenda's badge. Brenda S., lead gate agent. "Okay, Brenda," Jordan said softly. She picked up her ID. "I'll wait." Jordan didn't go to the back of the line. She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the jet bridge. She took a picture of the plane's tail number. Then she took a picture of the ramp below, where the baggage handlers were loading luggage. She saw something that made her stop cold. The cargo door of the Boeing 737 was open. The rain was pouring in. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the fluid leaking from the hydraulic line near the landing gear, mixing with the rainwater on the tarmac. It was a dark purple streak, unmistakable to a trained eye. Skydroll, hydraulic fluid. And the ramp agent down there? He just wiped it with a rag, gave a thumbs up to someone out of sight, and closed the cargo door. Jordan's heart stopped. They were sending a plane out with a hydraulic leak in a storm. She looked back at Brenda, who was now smirking at her. Brenda thought she had won a power struggle. She had no idea she had just declared war on the one person who could end her career. Jordan stood by the window, her phone in hand, recording the ramp agent as he hurriedly drove the tug away from the aircraft. The leak was small, perhaps a seep, but in aviation, small leaks became catastrophic failures at 30,000 feet. She knew the protocol. The pilots in the cockpit, Miller and Davis, likely couldn't see the leak from their angle. The walk-around inspection would have happened 20 minutes ago, likely before the seal gave way or the line ruptured. If that plane took off and lost hydraulic pressure in this weather, with a crosswind landing expected in Atlanta, it could be a disaster. Jordan walked back to the podium. Brenda saw her coming and rolled her eyes so hard it looked painful. "I told you to wait outside the gate area," she shouted, not even using her indoor voice anymore. "Kyle, call a red coat. Call security. She's coming back." "Brenda, listen to me," Jordan said, her voice projecting clearly this time. She didn't care about the passengers staring anymore. This was about safety. "I am not trying to board. You have a hydraulic leak on the number 2 system. I just saw it from the window. You need to call the flight deck immediately and stop the boarding process." Brenda stared at her, her mouth slightly open. For a second, Jordan thought the severity of the words had sunk in. Then Brenda laughed, a cruel, incredulous sound. "A hydraulic leak?" Brenda mocked. "Oh, so now you're a mechanic, too? First you're a pilot, now you're an engineer." Who are you, Superwoman? I am a senior Czech airman for this airline, Jordan said, slamming her hand flat on the counter, the sound echoing like a gunshot. And I am telling you that aircraft is not airworthy. Pick up that phone. Get away from my counter, Brenda shrieked. Suddenly, a side door burst open. A man in a cheap, ill-fitting suit stormed out. This was Chad, the terminal manager. He looked sweaty and stressed. What is going on here? Chad demanded, looking between Brenda and Jordan. Chad, thank God, Brenda said, playing the victim instantly. This woman is crazy. She's impersonating a pilot. She's harassing me. And now she's screaming about fake leaks to scare the passengers. She's holding up the flight. Chad turned to Jordan, his face red. He didn't ask for her side of the story. He didn't ask for ID. He saw a problem that needed to be removed. Ma'am, grab your bag, Chad ordered, pointing toward the terminal exit. You are denied boarding. You're trespassing. I'm Captain Jordan Banks, she said, holding her ID out to him. Look at the ID, you idiot. I'm trying to save your job. Chad slapped the ID out of her hand. It clattered onto the dirty airport carpet. The sound was small, but the silence that followed was deafening. Even the angry passengers went quiet. Jordan looked down at her ID, lying face up. The 4 stripes on the photo seemed to stare back at her. She looked up at Chad. His face fell slightly, realizing he might have just crossed a physical line, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. You threw my credentials on the floor, Jordan stated. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. It was the voice of a captain who had just lost an engine and was perfectly balancing the aircraft. It slipped, Chad stammered, but he squared his shoulders. Look, you're causing a scene. I don't care if you're the Queen of England. You are not flying on this plane. Security is on the way. 2 airport police officers were already jogging down the concourse. Jordan slowly bent down and picked up her ID. She dusted it off. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She simply took out her phone. Officer, Chad yelled, waving them over. This woman is making threats against the aircraft. The officers, big men with heavy gear, approached Jordan. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. Jordan looked at the officers. I will come with you. But first, I am declaring an emergency regarding the safety of Flight 4992. Save it for the station, the officer said, reaching for her arm. Don't touch me, Jordan said. She held up her phone. She wasn't recording them. She was dialing. Who are you calling? Brenda sneered. Customer service? Good luck with the hold times. No, Jordan said, pressing the speaker button. The phone rang once. Then a deep, gruff voice answered. This is Director Holloway. The color drained from Chad's face. Every Skyline employee knew that name. Richard Holloway was the VP of Flight Operations, the chief pilot, the boss of bosses. Richard, Jordan said into the phone, her eyes locked on Chad. It's Jordan. I'm at O'Hare, gate K12. I've just been assaulted by your terminal manager. My credentials were thrown on the ground, and I'm being arrested. What? Holloway's voice boomed through the speakerphone. Who is arresting you? Airport police, at the direction of Manager Chad and Agent Brenda. But that's not the headline, Richard. Jordan paused, watching Brenda's smirk vanish. The headline, Jordan continued, is that I just watched a ramp agent wipe a hydraulic leak off the gear strut of aircraft 774 and give a thumbs up, and your gate staff refused to let me notify the captain. They are currently boarding a plane that is bleeding skydroll. There was a silence on the line, so profound it felt like the terminal had been depressurized. Jordan, Holloway said, his voice dangerously low. Are you sure? I have video, she said. And Richard, I am formally exercising my authority as senior Czech airman. I am grounding this aircraft. and given the negligence I just witnessed on the ramp, I am initiating a code red audit." Chad gasped. "No, you can't! Put Chad on the phone!" Holloway roared. Jordan held the phone out. "Chad, it's for you." Chad's hands shook as he took the device. "Mr. Holloway, sir, she's exaggerating. She—" "Shut up!" Holloway screamed so loud the passengers could hear it. "You listen to me. You do exactly what Captain Banks tells you to do. You stop that boarding. You get the pilots off that plane. And you pray to God she doesn't decide to call the FAA before I get there. Is she still standing there?" "Yes, sir." "Give her the phone. And, Chad, if she is arrested, you better start walking, because you won't have a job to pay for a cab ride home." Chad handed the phone back to Jordan like it was a live grenade. Jordan put the phone to her ear. "I'm here, Richard." "Jordan, do what you have to do. Ground it." "I'm not just grounding this plane, Richard," Jordan said, looking at the terrified faces of Brenda and Chad. "If the ramp culture here is wiping leaks to keep on schedule, it's systemic. I'm grounding the entire O'Hare fleet until every logbook is checked." She hung up. She turned to the police officers. "Gentlemen, my name is Captain Banks. I am the acting authority for Skyline Airways at this terminal right now. Unless you want to be liable for a crash investigation, I suggest you escort me onto that jet bridge so I can save these people's lives." The officers looked at Chad. Chad nodded weakly. "After you, Captain," the officer said. Jordan adjusted her coat. She walked past Brenda. She didn't even look at her. She walked past the podium and onto the jet bridge. The real storm was just beginning. The jet bridge was cold, a damp, metallic tunnel connecting the sterile safety of the terminal to the aluminum tube that was supposed to hurtle through the sky at 500 miles per hour. Jordan walked with a pace that was terrifyingly brisk. The two police officers trailed her, unsure if they were escorting a suspect or a VIP. She reached the aircraft door. The lead flight attendant, a woman named Sarah with a friendly but exhausted smile, was greeting passengers. "Welcome aboard. 14C is to your right," Sarah said to a businessman, then turned to Jordan. "Welcome aboard, ma'am. Can I see your boarding pass?" "I don't have one," Jordan said, stepping into the galley. "I need to see Captain Miller immediately." Sarah's smile faltered. She stepped in front of the cockpit door, a reflex honed by years of post-9/11 security training. "Ma'am, you cannot enter the flight deck. I need you to step back." "Sarah," Jordan said, reading her name tag. "My name is Captain Jordan Banks, Skyline Standards. We have a mechanical emergency. Tell Miller to open the door, or I'm opening it with the emergency code." Sarah hesitated, looking at Jordan's eyes. She saw no madness there, only a fierce, professional intensity. She picked up the interphone. "Captain, there's a Captain Banks here. She says it's an emergency." A second later, the lock clicked. Jordan pushed the door open. The cockpit was a sanctuary of glowing screens, dials, and the low hum of the cooling fans. Captain Miller, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and the relaxed posture of someone who had flown this route 1,000 times, turned in his seat. Beside him was First Officer Davis, young, sharp, and currently loading the flight plan into the FMC, flight management computer. Miller frowned. He recognized the face, but couldn't place it immediately out of uniform. "Can I help you? We're trying to push in 10. "You're not pushing," Jordan said, squeezing into the jump seat space behind them. "You're leaking hydraulic fluid from the number 2 system. I need you to shut down the number 2 engine pumps immediately before you cavitate the system." Miller stared at her. "Excuse me? Who are you?" "Jordan Banks, check airman, Atlanta base." She pointed out the side window. "I was at the gate. I saw the ramp agent wipe the strut. It's not just a weep, Miller. It's a stream, and that ramp agent just cleared you for pushback." Miller looked at Davis. "Did you see anything on the walk-around?" "No, sir," Davis said, looking alarmed. "Gear looked dry, but that was 20 minutes ago. The rain makes it hard to tell." "That's what they're counting on," Jordan said grimly. "Davis, get out of the seat. Go down to the tarmac. Take a flashlight. Don't ask the ramp agent for permission. Just go." Davis unbuckled immediately. He grabbed his high-vis vest and squeezed past Jordan. Miller turned his body fully toward Jordan. "Banks, I know that name. You're the one who failed the chief pilot's son on his upgrade ride last year, aren't you?" "He wasn't ready," Jordan said flatly. "And neither is this plane. Miller, look at the logbook. Who signed off the release?" Miller handed her the heavy metal-bound maintenance log. Jordan flipped to the current date. Her eyes scanned the scribbled handwriting. Discrepancy. Pilot reports minor fluctuation in Hyde-Cis 2 pressure on inbound leg. Corrective action. Inspected lines. No leaks found. System serviced. Signed. Mechanic ID 8842. "They serviced it," Jordan whispered, fury rising in her chest. "They just topped it off." "So?" Miller asked. "That's standard if levels are low." "No, Miller. You don't just top off a pressurized system that's losing fluid unless you find where the fluid went," Jordan snapped. "If they filled it up 10 minutes ago and it's leaking now, that means the seal is blown. They pumped it full of fluid to hide the low-pressure light so you would take off. They wanted to get the plane out of Chicago before the delay clock ticked over." The radio crackled. "Skyline 492, ground. Ready for push." Miller looked at the radio, then at Jordan. He was an old dog, company loyal, but he wasn't suicidal. Suddenly, the cockpit door opened. First Officer Davis burst in. He was soaking wet, shivering, and pale. "Captain," Davis breathed heavily. "She's right. There's a puddle under the main gear, and, sir, the brake line looks crimped. If we had landed in Atlanta with that, we would have lost braking on the left side." Miller's face went grey. He looked at the radio. Then he looked at Jordan. The realization of what could have happened, a runway excursion at high speed, fire, mass casualties, washed over him. "They signed it off," Miller whispered. "Mechanic 8842 signed it off." "Who is the station manager today?" Jordan asked. "Chad Reynolds," Miller said. "Chad," Jordan nodded. "The man who just threw my ID on the floor and tried to have me arrested for telling him about this." Jordan reached over the center pedestal and grabbed the PA microphone. "Captain, may I?" she asked. Miller nodded slowly. "It's your floor, Captain Banks." Jordan keyed the mic. Her voice didn't boom. It was the calm, controlled voice of authority that every passenger prays for in a crisis. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Jordan Banks. I am a senior chief pilot for Skyline, currently on board your flight. I need to inform you that we are cancelling this flight immediately." A collective groan of despair echoed from the cabin behind the door. "Please listen," Jordan continued. "I have identified a critical safety failure that was ignored by ground staff. This aircraft is not safe to fly. I know you want to get home, but I want you to get home alive. We are deplaning, and I am personally ensuring that no Skyline aircraft leaves this terminal until I am satisfied that you are safe. Please gather your belongings." She hung up the mic. "Miller," Jordan said, "don't just cancel the flight. Call Ops. Tell them you are declaring the aircraft AOG, aircraft on ground, and tell them Captain Banks has initiated a code red." Miller picked up the sat phone. "Ops is going to lose their minds. A code red freezes the whole hub." "Good," Jordan said, looking out the rain-streaked window at the dark tarmac. "Let them freeze." The terminal was a scene of absolute pandemonium. When 200 passengers stream off a plane that was supposed to leave and they tell the waiting crowd that the pilot saved our lives, the mood shifts from frustration to insurrection. Jordan walked off the jet bridge, flanked by Captain Miller and First Officer Davis. This time, the police officers weren't escorting her as a suspect. They were forming a protective wedge around the flight crew. Brenda, the gate agent, was standing on her chair, trying to scream over the angry mob. "Please! We are working on rebooking. There is another flight in 3 hours." "There won't be another flight," Jordan said. She didn't shout, but her voice cut through the noise because she was standing right next to the PA system at the podium. She picked up the phone Brenda had used to humiliate her earlier. "Attention O'Hare Terminal 3, Jordan announced. "This applies to all Skyline Airways passengers at gates K1 through K15. The terminal went quiet. The sight of 3 pilots standing together, grim-faced, commanded attention. "My name is Captain Banks. Due to gross negligence found on the ramp and falsification of safety records, I have ordered a mandatory grounding of all Skyline departures from this airport, effective immediately." The gasp that went through the crowd was audible. "What?" Chad screamed, running out of the back office again. "You can't do that. You don't have the authority." Jordan turned to him. "The Operations Manual, Section 5, Paragraph 2. Any check airman has the unilateral authority to suspend operations if imminent danger to the public is detected." "That's me, Chad." "You're insane!" Chad yelled, his face purple. "I'm calling corporate. I'm calling the CEO." "Call them," Jordan said. "But while you do that, look at the screen." She pointed to the massive departure board hanging over the center of the concourse. Usually it was a list of yellow times and green on-time statuses. As they watched, the first line flickered. Skyline 492 to Atlanta, cancelled. Then the next. Skyline 881 to Miami, cancelled. Skyline 202 to Boston, cancelled. One by one, like dominoes falling, the entire board turned red. "How?" Chad stammered. "How did you—" "I called Holloway," Jordan said calmly, "and Holloway called dispatch, and dispatch pushed the button. The system is locked, Chad. Nothing moves." The sheer scale of the financial damage was calculating in Chad's eyes. A full ground stop at a major hub cost millions of dollars an hour. The ripple effect would delay flights in Europe, Asia, and South America. "You destroyed the airline," Brenda hissed, stepping down from her chair, her earlier arrogance replaced by pure fear. "Do you know what you've done? We'll all be fired." "No, Brenda," Jordan said, stepping closer to her. "You won't all be fired. Just the ones who decided that on-time performance was more important than human lives. Just the ones who told a captain to wait outside because she didn't look the part. This is about you being offended." Chad laughed nervously, trying to rally the passengers to his side. "Folks, listen. She's doing this because of an ego trip. She's mad we didn't let her board first." "Is that right?" The voice came from behind the podium. A man in a dark windbreaker walked through the crowd. He was followed by 2 other men carrying heavy Pelican cases, technical equipment. The man flashed a badge that wasn't an airline ID. It was gold, and it said, "Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration." "I'm Inspector Roberts, FAA," the man said. "Which one of you is Chad Reynolds?" Chad swallowed hard. I am." "And are you Captain Banks?" Roberts asked, turning to Jordan. "I am. Director Holloway called me," Roberts said. "He sent me the video you took. We also pulled the ramp surveillance tapes remotely about 5 minutes ago." The terminal was deadly silent. "Mr. Reynolds," Roberts said, his voice dry and bureaucratic. "The tapes show your ramp lead wiping a hydraulic leak. They also show him handing a clipboard to a mechanic who signed it without looking at the gear." That is a violation of Federal Aviation Regulation, Part 121. It is also a felony conspiracy to falsify maintenance records. Chad started to shake. I didn't tell them to do that. I just told them to get the plane out on time. We have your emails too, Chad, Jordan interjected softly. Holloway forwarded them. The memo from last week? Reduce maintenance delays by 50% or face termination. You created the culture. They were just following orders. Roberts nodded. Mr. Reynolds, I'm placing this station under federal investigation. I'm pulling the repair station certificate for Skyline Airways at O'Hare immediately. No Skyline plane leaves here until every single bolt is checked by an FAA inspector. That might take a week. A week, Chad whispered. That's bankruptcy. That's safety, Jordan corrected him. Roberts turned to the police officers who were still confusedly standing by. Officers, I need you to detain the ramp lead and the mechanic identified as employee 8842. And frankly, I'd keep an eye on Mr. Reynolds here. We're going to have a lot of questions for him. As the gravity of the situation settled, the passengers, who had been ready to riot moments ago, began to realize what had actually happened. They looked at the red screens, then at the rain pounding the glass, then at Jordan. A woman in the front row, holding a baby, stepped forward. You grounded the planes? Yes, Jordan said, bracing for the anger. I'm sorry for the delay. You stopped us from getting on a broken plane, the woman said, her voice shaking. Thank you. Slowly, applause started. It wasn't a roar, but a ripple. One person, then 10, then 50. Jordan didn't smile. She just nodded. She turned to Brenda. Brenda was weeping silently, holding her badge in her hand. You told me to wait outside, Jordan said to her. I think you should go home now, Brenda. You won't be needed here anymore. Jordan turned to Roberts. Inspector, I have the incident report drafted on my iPad. Where do you want to set up? The chief pilot's office is unlocked, Roberts said. I think it's your office now, effectively. Jordan picked up her roller bag. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She walked through the terminal, her head high, the sound of her heels clicking on the terrazzo floor, the only steady rhythm in a chaotic world. But the war wasn't over. Holloway had backed her up, but the board of directors was waking up, and Wall Street was about to react. Jordan Banks had saved a plane, but she had just cost powerful men a lot of money, and powerful men rarely took calmer lying down. The silence in the boardroom of Skyline Airways' global headquarters in Atlanta was different from the silence in the cockpit. In the cockpit, silence meant focus. Here, on the 45th floor, silence meant execution. Preston Ashford, the CEO of Skyline Airways, stood by the window looking out at the city. He was a man who measured success in quarter-over-quarter growth, not in successful landings. He turned to face the long mahogany table. Sitting there was Jordan Banks. She was in her full uniform now, double-breasted blazer, gold wings, 4 stripes on her shoulders. She sat perfectly still, her cap resting on the table in front of her. Next to her sat Richard Holloway, the VP of Flight Ops. He looked tired. He had been fighting legal battles for 48 hours straight since Jordan shut down O'Hare. Captain Banks, Ashford began, his voice smooth like oiled leather. Do you know what the stock price did this morning? I haven't checked, sir, Jordan replied. I've been busy with the FAA investigators. It dropped 14%, Ashford said, walking over to lean on the table. 14%. That represents roughly $400 million in market capitalization, vaporized. Because of you. Because of a hydraulic leak, sir, Jordan corrected him. A leak that could have been handled quietly, Ashford snapped, losing his cool for a split second. "We have procedures for this. You don't ground a fleet. You don't call the FAA on your own company. You don't go rogue." "I followed the operations manual," Jordan said. Section 5. "The manual is a guide, not a suicide pact." Ashford slammed his hand on the table. "We are bleeding cash. The investors are calling for heads, and I have to give them one." He slid a folder across the table toward her. "What is this?" Jordan asked. "This," Ashford said, "is a press release. It states that you acted prematurely due to, let's call it, fatigue-induced stress. It says you overreacted. You will apologize for the disruption. In exchange, you will be placed on paid administrative leave for 6 months, fully salaried, while this blows over. Then you come back quietly." Jordan opened the folder. She read the first line. "Captain Jordan Banks admits to error in judgment." She closed the folder. She slid it back. "And if I don't?" Ashford smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then we terminate you for cause, insubordination, causing malicious damage to company reputation. We will pull your pension. And I will personally make sure the FAA Medical Board receives a report suggesting you are psychologically unfit to fly. You'll never sit in a cockpit again. You won't even be able to fly a Cessna." Jordan looked at Holloway. The VP was staring at his hands. "Richard?" Jordan asked. "Are you hearing this?" Holloway looked up. His eyes were pained. "Jordan, the board is out for blood. If you sign it, you keep your pension. You live to fight another day." Jordan felt a cold knot in her stomach. Holloway was buckling. The system was closing ranks. They didn't care about the near crash. They cared about the narrative. "I won't sign it," Jordan said, standing up. "Then you're fired," Ashford said instantly. "Effective immediately. Hand over your badge and your KCM card. Security will escort you out." Jordan reached into her pocket. She placed her badge on the table next to the folder. "You're making a mistake, Preston," she said. "The only mistake," Ashford sneered, "was thinking a pilot understands business. Get out." Jordan walked to the door. She didn't look back. She knew exactly what was coming next. They would destroy her name in the press. They would paint her as the crazy captain who hallucinated a leak and cost people their vacations. But as she stepped into the elevator, she pulled a small USB drive from her pocket. She hadn't told Ashford about the second email she had found, or the voicemail. She took out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "CNN News Desk. This is Captain Jordan Banks. You're going to want to send a camera crew to the federal courthouse tomorrow morning. I'm holding a press conference." The media storm was vicious. For 3 days, Skyline's PR machine worked overtime. News anchors referred to the O'Hare incident as a personnel breakdown. Unnamed sources claimed Jordan Banks had a history of being difficult and confrontational with staff. By the time Jordan walked up the steps of the courthouse, half the country thought she was a hero, and the other half thought she was a diva who deserved to be fired. She stood at the podium, surrounded by microphones. The wind was blowing her hair, but she stood tall. She wasn't in uniform today. She wore a sharp black suit. 3 days ago, Jordan began, her voice echoing across the plaza. I was terminated by Skyline Airways for refusing to lie about a safety violation. A reporter from a major network shouted, "Skyline says there was no leak. They say their maintenance records show the plane was dry." "Skyline says a lot of things," Jordan said, "but airplanes don't lie, and neither do digital footprints." She held up a piece of paper. "This is an affidavit from Benjamin Kay, the mechanic known as Employee 88842, the man who signed the logbook." The crowd went silent. "Benny came to my house last night," Jordan said. He told me that his manager, under pressure from terminal manager Chad Reynolds, ordered him to sign the book or lose his job. He gave me the original work order, the one they tried to delete. She signaled to her lawyer, who projected an image onto a screen set up behind her. It was a text message chain. Sender, Chad Reynolds receiver. Maintenance lead. Timestamp, 10:14 a.m. Ashford is watching the numbers. If that 737 goes AOG, we miss the bonus target. Wipe it, sign it, send it. If it leaks in Atlanta, it's Atlanta's problem. The gasp from the press corps was audible. If it leaks in Atlanta, it's Atlanta's problem, Jordan repeated. That is the safety culture of Skyline Airways under Preston Ashford. They gambled with 200 lives for a quarterly bonus. But wait, a voice shouted from the back. It wasn't a reporter. Preston Ashford himself was marching up the steps, flanked by his legal team. He had clearly been watching the live feed and scrambled from the nearby HQ. "This is a fabrication," Ashford yelled, his face red. "She is a disgruntled former employee. That screenshot is fake. We will sue you for libel, Banks." Jordan looked at Ashford. She didn't flinch. "I thought you might say that, Preston." She turned to the microphone. "That's why I didn't just bring a screenshot. I brought a witness." A black SUV pulled up to the curb. The door opened. Richard Halloway stepped out. Ashford froze. "Richard, what are you doing?" Halloway walked up the steps. He looked tired, but unburdened. He stood next to Jordan. "I'm sorry, Preston," Halloway said into the microphones. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't let you bury her." Halloway pulled a thick stack of documents from his briefcase. "I am the VP of Flight Operations," Halloway announced to the cameras, "and I am formally whistleblowing to the FAA. These are the internal memos from Mr. Ashford authorizing the reduction of safety checks to improve turnaround times. And this," he held up a digital recorder, "is the recording of the board meeting where Mr. Ashford discussed how to silence Captain Banks." Ashford looked like he had been shot. He looked at his lawyers, but they were already stepping away from him, distancing themselves from the radioactive fallout. "You're fired, Halloway," Ashford screamed, losing all composure. "You're both done." "Actually," a calm voice came from the side. Inspector Roberts from the FAA stepped forward, followed by 2 FBI agents in windbreakers. "Mr. Ashford," Roberts said, "we've heard enough. Conspiracy to violate federal safety regulations is a felony. So is wire fraud, which is what happens when you lie to investors about your safety compliance." The FBI agents moved in. "Preston Ashford," the agent said, pulling out handcuffs, "you are under arrest." The cameras flashed like strobe lights as the CEO of Skyline Airways was cuffed on live television. He looked at Jordan, his eyes full of hate. Jordan just looked back. "You should have just checked my ID," she whispered, though he couldn't hear her. The wheels of justice, much like a heavy cargo plane, turn slowly, but when they finally gain momentum, they are unstoppable. For 6 months following the arrests on the courthouse steps, Jordan Banks lived in a strange, suspended reality. She was a hero to the public, a pariah to the old guard of the aviation industry, and a ghost in her own home. The adrenaline of the confrontation had faded, replaced by the grueling, monotonous work of the legal system. She spent her days in deposition rooms with grey walls and flickering fluorescent lights, retelling the story of Flight 492 until the words felt like ash in her mouth. She wasn't flying. The FAA had reinstated her medical clearance immediately, and the new interim leadership of Skyline Airways had theoretically lifted her suspension. But she wasn't ready. Every time she looked at her uniform hanging in the closet, she didn't feel pride. She felt the weight of the fight. She felt the memory of Chad's hand slapping her ID to the floor. She felt the cold, dismissive stare of Preston Ashford. The trial of United States versus Preston Ashford and Chad Reynolds began in late April. It was the spectacle of the year. The courtroom was packed every single day. Aspiring pilots, union representatives, and safety advocates filled the gallery. They weren't just there for the drama. They were there because Jordan Banks had become a symbol. She was the line in the sand. Jordan sat in the front row as the prosecution laid out the case. It was worse than she had imagined. The discovery phase had unearthed terabytes of data. It wasn't just O'Hare. The efficiency mandate Ashford had pushed had led to cut corners in Miami, rushed inspections in Dallas, and ignored sensor warnings in Seattle. Flight 492 was just the one that got caught. It was the loose thread that unraveled the entire tapestry of corruption. When Chad Reynolds took the stand, he didn't look like the arrogant tyrant who had threatened to arrest her. He looked small. He wore a suit that was too big for him, likely bought for the trial, and he wouldn't meet Jordan's eyes. Under cross-examination, he crumbled. He wept as he admitted to pressuring the mechanics. He admitted that he had called Brenda, the gate agent, and told her to make the problem go away when Jordan first approached the podium. "I was afraid," Chad sobbed into the microphone. "Mr. Ashford told us that if our numbers dropped, we were out. I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids. I didn't want to lose my job." Jordan watched him with a complicated mix of pity and disgust. He was a villain, yes, but he was also a victim of a poisonous culture. He was a weak man who had been given power he didn't understand. But when Preston Ashford took the stand, there was no pity. The former CEO remained defiant to the bitter end. He argued that risk management was a part of business. He argued that Jordan Banks was a rogue element who didn't understand the complexities of running a Fortune 500 company. Then came the closing arguments. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Alana Vance, simply played the video Jordan had taken from the terminal window. The grainy footage of the ramp agent wiping the purple fluid from the strut played on the massive screens. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Vance said, pointing to the screen, "Mr. Ashford calls this risk management. But ask yourself, if your family was on that plane, what would you call it?" The verdict took 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Preston Ashford was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy to defraud the FAA and wire fraud. Chad Reynolds received 18 months of probation and a lifetime ban from holding a safety-sensitive position in aviation. As the bailiff led Ashford away in handcuffs, he stopped. He turned to look at the gallery. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found Jordan. For a moment, the mask slipped. There was no arrogance left, only the hollow realization of a man who had flown too close to the sun on wings made of greed. He looked at her, and then he looked down. He had finally been grounded. Jordan walked out of the courthouse and into the blinding spring sunlight. The press was there, a sea of cameras and microphones, but she walked past them. She didn't want to give a statement. She just wanted to go home. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a number she recognized. "Hello? Captain Banks?" The voice was familiar. It was warm, authoritative, and tired. It was Richard Halloway. "Hi, Richard," she said, leaning against a stone pillar. "Did you hear?" "I heard," Halloway said. "Justice is served. But that's not why I'm calling, Jordan. I'm calling because Skyline has a new CEO. The board brought in an outsider, someone from the safety board, and his first order of business was to reinstate me as chief pilot." "Congratulations," Jordan said, and she meant it. "You're the right man for the job." "I am," Halloway agreed. But a chief pilot is only as good as his standards captains. I need you back, Jordan. Not in the office. Not in a courtroom. I need you on the line. I need you in the left seat. Jordan hesitated. I don't know, Richard. It's been a long 6 months. I have a flight tomorrow, Halloway said. Skyline 492, O'Hare to Atlanta. The same route, the same time. We're relaunching it as a symbol of the new era. I'm flying co-pilot. I need a captain. Silence stretched on the line. Jordan watched a pigeon take flight from the courthouse steps, its wings beating against the wind. Jordan? I'll be there, she whispered. The next morning, O'Hare International Airport felt different. The tension that usually hung over the terminal seemed to have lifted, replaced by a strange, respectful quiet. Jordan walked through the sliding glass doors of Terminal 3. She wore her uniform, freshly pressed. The 4 gold stripes on her epaulets caught the light. Her hat sat perfectly on her head. As she pulled her roller bag toward the security checkpoint, she noticed the looks. People recognized her. Not just the staff, but the passengers. A TSA agent nodded at her with a solemn respect as she passed through the KCM gate. A barista at the coffee stand tried to give her her latte for free, which Jordan politely refused, insisting on paying. She walked toward gate K12. The scene was surreal. It was the exact same spot where, 6 months ago, Brenda had sneered at her, where Chad had thrown her ID on the floor, where she had been threatened with arrest. But today, there was no Brenda. There was no Chad. Instead, the gate area was decorated with balloons. A banner hung over the podium. Welcome back, Captain Banks. The new gate agents, young, diverse, and smiling, stood at attention as she approached. But it wasn't just staff. Standing near the window, looking out at the Boeing 737-800, waiting at the jet bridge, was a group of people Jordan didn't expect. It was the crew from that night. Captain Miller, First Officer Davis, Sarah, the flight attendant who had guarded the cockpit door. They were all there, in uniform. Miller stepped forward. He looked older, but happier. He extended a hand. We heard you were flying the re-inaugural, Miller said, shaking her hand firmly. We requested to deadhead on this flight, just to support you. You didn't have to do that, Jordan said, feeling a tightness in her throat. We wanted to, Davis said, grinning. Besides, we know the pre-flight inspection will be done right this time. Jordan laughed. It was the first time she had genuinely laughed in half a year. She walked onto the jet bridge. The smell of jet fuel and coffee hit her, the perfume of her life. She entered the aircraft. Richard Halloway was already in the cockpit, running the checklist. He looked up as she entered. Captain on deck, Halloway announced. Jordan stowed her bag. She sat in the left seat, the captain's seat. She adjusted the pedals. She ran her hand over the yoke. It felt like coming home. It felt like an extension of her own body. She put on her headset. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan said into the PA, her voice steady and strong. This is your captain, Jordan Banks. Welcome to Skyline Flight 492 to Atlanta. A cheer erupted from the cabin. It was loud enough to be heard through the reinforced cockpit door. We have a beautiful day for flying, she continued. Our flight time will be 1 hour and 50 minutes. Sit back, relax, and know that you are in good hands. We aren't going anywhere until we are 100% ready. And today, we are ready. She turned to Halloway. Checklist? Complete, Halloway said. Engine start? Cleared. The engines whined to life, a low, powerful rumble that vibrated through the frame of the aircraft. Jordan released the parking brake. Skyline 492, taxi to runway 28 right, the tower controller chirped. Then, breaking protocol for just a second, The controller added, "And welcome back, Captain Banks. Good to hear your voice." "Good to be back, Tower," Jordan replied. She guided the massive bird out to the runway. She lined up on the center line. The long strip of concrete stretched out before her, leading into the sky. She pushed the throttles forward. The engines roared. The force pressed her back into her seat. The runway lights blurred into streaks of white. V1. Rotate. Jordan pulled back on the yoke. The wheels left the ground. The bumping and shaking of the earth vanished, replaced by the smooth, pure lift of the air. They climbed steeply, banking left over the Chicago skyline. Jordan looked out the side window. Below her, the airport was just a grid of concrete. The city was a patchwork of grey and green. The courthouse, the corporate headquarters, the prison where Ashford now sat. They were all tiny, insignificant specks. They punched through the layer of clouds at 10,000 feet. Suddenly, the grey world was gone. Above the clouds, the sun was blindingly bright. The sky was a deep, endless, perfect blue. It was quiet up here. It was clean. Holloway looked over at her. "How does it feel?" Jordan took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the recycled air that tasted like freedom. She looked at the horizon, where the blue of the sky met the curvature of the earth. She thought about the fight. She thought about the fear. She thought about the girl who had been told to wait outside. That girl was gone. The woman in the cockpit was unshakable. "It feels," Jordan said, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips, "like we're right where we belong." She engaged the autopilot, but she kept her hands near the controls, ready for anything. The turbulence was behind them. The storm had passed, and ahead, for as far as the eye could see, there was only clear air. Jordan Banks didn't just save a plane that day. She saved the soul of the airline. Preston Ashford is currently serving 5 years in federal prison. Chad Reynolds pleaded guilty to negligence and is serving probation. And Jordan? She was promoted to chief pilot of the entire fleet, rewriting the safety culture for the whole industry. It goes to show, titles don't make you a leader. Integrity does. And if you ever try to judge someone by how they look instead of what they know, just remember Captain Banks and be prepared for a hard landing. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold at 30,000 feet, smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. What would you have done if you saw that leak? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe and fly high.